Welcome to Nailing the Apex, everyone. I'm Tim Hauraney. Please head on over to Spotify, give us a 5-star rating and a follow. Same goes with Apple Podcasts as well. Rate reviews, it really helps us grow the show. You can also watch us on YouTube. You can follow me on social media. Alex Palou becomes a 2-time IndyCar champion. Here to help me break it all down, Dutch Motorsport reporter Jeroen Demmendaal. Jeroen, thanks very much for taking the time to do this. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks for having me on again.
Anytime, pal. So let's jump right into it. Before the race, Chip Ganassi told us that, Alex said he was going to wrap up this championship with a win on Sunday. And, he did just that. I mean, Palou currently with the series best 5 wins this season. I don't remember a time a driver ever got anywhere near that within a season and became the champion at the same time. This is a tough series to win in, Jeroen.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think you end up with sort of Alex Zanardi, right, in the mid '90s with Chip Ganassi Racing. I think that's sort of as far as we would have to go back. But I mean, my goodness, Alex Palou. I mean, he hasn't finished worse than 8th this season. I mean, to do in a series like this that is so competitive, where the field is so on top of each other, where you get so many strong drivers, strong teams, to be so consistent, like you say, to sort of win so many races, get so many podiums, and consistently finish in the top 8. I mean, it's absolutely outstanding. And then in Portland to also win the race sort of in style and win the championship in style by really basically dominating the race. Yeah, it was very, very impressive.
I think for having 4 road course victories and a street course victory in one season, I mean, just looking at that in itself is extremely impressive. Obviously didn't have an oval win this season, which, I mean, that would be the next layer of incredibleness to add to this whole mix here if you were able to pull that off. But just that body of work within a season is extremely impressive. Chip Ganassi Racing's 15th season title at the same time. It's interesting, hearing from Chip after this race confirming that Alex would be back at the team in 2024. And, from what we've learned, it's possible, from what I've learned, I should say, it's a possible 3-year deal. Could see him at the team until 2027, but we're not going to learn more about this until after the last race of the season, obviously. Were you surprised to hear Chip say that at during the post-race press conference there?
Not really, no. I think that was actually the perfect moment to say it. If anything, you want to sort of, put down the gauntlet, especially towards Aaron McLaren, of course, which has been trying to sort of nab him and take him into their team. I think this is the moment to sort of once and for all take away any doubts about where Alex Palou's future lies. And then, I mean, I don't know whether we will ever find out sort of, what the length of the contract is, because we know that Chip Ganassi usually doesn't talk about contracts. But why would he go anywhere else? I mean, this is the team that makes him perform, right? I mean, going to Aaron McLaren would have been a gamble. Clearly, any sort of potential Formula One doors that he might have been looking at have all been closed by now. I mean, to me, it makes perfect sense, both for Chip Ganassi Racing, but also for Alex Palou to sort of just continue this partnership, because, I mean, clearly it is working.
At the end of the day, when you take a look at what's open within the field, there was obviously everything that was going on between him and McLaren. But at this moment, CGR is still, if not the best team on the grid outside of Penske. And if you get an opportunity to stick around with either one of those teams, I mean, you have to take it. This move to McLaren, I think, big part of that was the F1 offering from Zach, right? I mean, I think McLaren's not going to take that next step until they move into a new factory and start recruiting even more people. But obviously the team itself is there. They are hovering around that, top 3. But through this whole thing for Alex, I mean, in a legal battle at the moment with McLaren, McLaren Racing suing him for breach of contract. I think it's impressive for me to see, I guess, just how focused he's been able to remain during all of this throughout the season, because, I mean, as a driver, that's got to be difficult to block out and then go out and win races and championships.
Yeah, well, I think that's the impressive thing, right? The fact that mentally he's been able to be so strong and he seems basically unfazed by whatever is going on around him, and by this sort of whirlwind of different, like you say, legal battles and contract battles that's going on. Instead, he just focuses on the job at hand, just gets into his car, straps in, and goes out there, and then performs consistently week after week, race after race. It's highly impressive. I can also imagine that that people in Formula One are paying attention to this, and they are seeing something here that maybe further down the line might interest them.
Yeah.
So, there's been some stories about whether, he, together with Honda, he might sort of jump in over at Aston Martin come 2026. By that time, maybe Fernando Alonso retires and so on. So, I think there's a lot of speculation going on right now. I definitely don't know what's going on. But I definitely am not willing to rule him out yet for a Formula One future in a few years down the line.
He did make mention, though, of his age a couple times, in particular him saying how old he was now, moving on to being a 27-year-old, and how he wasn't 19 or 20 anymore. And so when you look at Formula One, obviously they are looking at younger drivers nowadays, and they keep getting younger and younger as the seasons go on. And outside of that, I just don't know if there would be room for Alex on the grid in the future. I don't know if his age prevents that from happening.
I don't know. Formula One drivers, they also just keep on getting older and older, right? So the Hamiltons and the Alonsos of this world, they also just keep on going. So they retire later and later as well. I don't know. There's pros and cons to having a younger driver and an older driver, I guess. Somebody like Palou, he's a much more fully complete and polished driver than, say, if you're Alfa Romeo now, you put an Oliver Behrman in your car who's 18 years old and just comes fresh out of F2. Yeah. On the other hand, somebody like Oscar Piastri is only 22, 23, but is clearly very mature for his age already. Max Verstappen, of course, was very, very mature for his very young age. So I guess I'm not sure if age is really the defining factor to me. I think it's also what kind of personality do you have? And I do think that sort of Alex Palou's mental strength is a massive asset if he would ever try to sort of, sell himself into an F1 team.
Let's talk about his race on Sunday at the Portland Grand Prix, because he was impressive. Ray Hall, Graham Rahal starting on pole. Just want to talk quickly about RLL. Their season has been such a roller coaster, and how they've turned things around since Toronto. They've really been impressive, Jeroen. What I don't know if you know, but what is going on at that team? I know they had to do a lot of restructuring a few months ago, but it was never really talked about. I wonder what restructuring they have done that has allowed them to unlock so much performance.
I think especially after the Toronto race, I think Bobby Rahal, he sort of opened up about this at length in the post-race press conference, where he said sort of we had to let some people go. We had to give some people different roles. And he says, that's difficult. He actually said, I had sleepless nights first after what happened at Indy because of all his partners. When they have so many corporate partners, right? They have so many employees. And then when your team is so basically, lost at sea, I can understand that sort of, you lose sleep over smaller things than that.
Yeah.
So, and then, of course, but they also decided we need to do something. And clearly, I don't know the ins and outs of it, but clearly they made some changes in how they structured their engineering sector, and maybe, let go of a few people, brought in a few other people. And whatever they did, it worked. They definitely sort of put a step forward. On the other hand, I thought sort of, I was amazed actually that Graham Rahal managed to grab a pole on Saturday on black tires, no less, on the harder tire. But then I think also their race pace wasn't great, which you could also see with Christian Lundgaard, who also sort of was, firmly stuck in the mid pack, right, rather than sort of really fighting for top 10.
Yeah, because Lundgaard was even quick in, I believe it was practice one. He was lightning quick then as well. The team has definitely turned things around here, and excited to see what they can do next season. As for the start of this race, there were a few drivers starting on the primary tires, Palou being one of them. And then after that, you go with Dixon, Award, Rosenqvist. So a lot of those front runners, though, were starting on the red alternates. And at the end of the day, just a few drivers made the right decisions to start on that black primary tire, and it really worked out for them. Obviously, with Rosenqvist, his situation was a little bit different as the race evolved, and we can get into that a little bit later. But I just found it fascinating, the different tire strategies that these drivers opted to run on throughout this beginning of the race. And one of the other things that really caught my eye was Kyle Kirkwood, and just wondering what the hell was going on with him out there on Sunday, because I got into it with Canapino on lap 29, I think it was, and he had a pretty dangerous move, I would call it, on Ryan Hunter-Reay on the that really fast backstretch in Portland. And then later in the race, got tangled up with Joseph Newgarden. Just really weird driving from Kirkwood this weekend. He's not usually like that. I mean, that was the one move on Hunter-Reay. I don't know how he didn't get penalized for that.
No, well, to be honest, yeah, the Hunter-Reay move was really, really hairy. I agree. But to be honest, I mean, I found Andretti as a whole, they were really a little bit all over the place, because let's be fair. I mean, Kirkwood had a bit of an off day, but so did Colton Herta, of course. Herta breaking a speed limit in pit lane, and then sort of fighting his way back, and then sort of spinning again at in the final sector. Romain Grosjean, I mean, basically had a very rough first lap, and then basically was out of the running as well for the rest of the race. So and I mean, this is the whole story of Andretti, right? I mean, this season it's really hot and cold. I mean, because Kyle Kirkwood also has had great races. You know, we saw him at Long Beach where he was fantastic. I mean, he was really, really strong at Nashville. But there are also races where Andretti is just, you know, for all the resources that they have and all, you know, apparently the engineering prowess that they're supposed to have, they're just very mid-pack and very unimpressive.
Yeah.
And that is Andretti Autosport has always been a bit of a mystery to me, especially in recent years, because it basically happens season after season after season again. Like you said before, I mean, it's Ganassi and Penske. They're the guys fighting for the championships. No one else.
Mm-hmm. So on lap 30, we've got Award, Rosenqvist, obviously two teammates battling it out, coming out of the pits. Interesting tire choice for Felix. He came out on the red alternates at that point, and Award was on the primary. So that meant that Rosenqvist was going to have to run those primaries later in the race. So with about, I think it was around 27 laps to go, was Canapino had spun off and brought out the yellow, but Rosenqvist got into pit lane just before the caution was thrown. He had to do a load of laps, Jeroen, on that soft tire. I think it was about 22 racing laps in total for him. Like, it was a pretty impressive drive from him, I think, on Sunday, all things considered. Did you expect him to finish, P2?
No, well, I mean, by that time, of course, he was already in the running for that. But to be honest, I was impressed how he managed his tires. I think, sort of, in general, he was the strongest of the lot of the Arrow McLaren drivers, and that hasn't always been the case this season. I mean, often he's been third best behind Rossi and Award. So, yeah, I think he just had a good run. I think also maybe for him. I mean, we're going to talk a little bit silly season later, but I think maybe for him to have his future sorted, I think maybe that gives some mental rest as well.
Yeah, good point.
That sort of, he can drive a bit more freely, maybe feels a little bit less that he has to prove himself, sort of. So, I mean, maybe the whole situation with sort of, slowly but surely all the puzzle bits falling into place, right? That sort of helps a few of these guys as well to just sort of settle down a bit more. But yeah, I mean, Rosenqvist drove a very, very impressive race. Absolutely.
Lap 49. I want to talk a bit about the blocking issue with Alex Palou and Helio Castroneves. So he wasn't Palou wasn't really fighting for. Well, I shouldn't say Castroneves wasn't really fighting for the net lead at the time, but for Palou to be as aggressive with his blocking as he was. I was a little shocked that he didn't get a penalty for that. I mean,
yeah. Well, I think, sort of, to be honest, that the race stewards were very lenient. Yesterday. Still, I mean, like you said before, the Kirkwood Ryan Hunter-Reay move didn't get anything. Ericsson on Islet in lap 1 or lap 2 didn't get anything. Rinus VeeKay on Marcus Ericsson didn't get anything. And in this particular case, yes, you could say that sort of, I mean, he was moving position twice, Palou, and that sort of is almost the textbook definition of blocking. At the same time, he wasn't fighting Castroneves for position. Would Castroneves have passed him there? Palou would have passed him two corners further down the road. So I do think that context probably played a role in the decision as well, that they were like, yeah, well, Castroneves, if it would have been sort of like a move for the lead, maybe that's sort of when you sort of really sort of intervene. But Castroneves was never in a direct battle with Palou. That's at least the way I interpreted it.
Yeah, that's a good point. And it's good to see, I guess, the stewards keeping it fairly consistent, as in the closing stages of this race. You had Palou leading, Rosenqvist was chasing, you had Dixon in third, Award chasing down Dixon for P3, and then you had Marcus Armstrong, who was a lap down and lets his teammate Scott Dixon go by, but chose to hold up Pato Award. It was like he didn't. I don't know. He held him up. He held him up pretty good, but it was just interesting comments from Award following the race on lap cars blocking the leaders. So for Pato, he ended up finishing this race in fourth place. Like I had said, he was fighting Dixon. Obviously Rosenqvist was a little bit more up the road. He had used a lot of push to pass to get past lap cars throughout the race, though. That was one of his issues. And his comment on it is, quote, "Stop being an ass and let other people fight." So when I hear that, he was pretty frustrated about all of it. But it isn't the first time, actually, we've seen something like this season. And my question would be, what should the series do about lap cars and leaders coming through? I mean, obviously, you have the Formula One example. I like what Formula One does in that regard, where when the leaders are coming through, the lap traffic needs to get the hell out of the way, so the leaders can do their thing. I kind of like that system a lot better than what IndyCar does. I mean, I do understand that some of these drivers are allowed to unlap themselves at the same time, but I don't know. I would like them to take a closer look at this one, though, Jeroen.
Yeah, I wish I could agree with you, but I don't. The thing is, I mean, I've grown up with IndyCar racing like this since I grew up with IndyCar racing in the 90s and the 2000s. I mean, this to me is a central feature of American open wheel racing. We don't do blue flags. If you want to pass a lap car or back marker, you just have to pass them. And I understand. I mean, Pato Award is always outspoken when it comes to these things. I mean, he never hides his feelings in that sense, and that's great. That's why we love him. Same with Willpower. And at the same time, of course, I mean, it's also the situation, the heat of the moment. I'm sure if Pato Award was benefiting from one of these situations, he maybe might have sounded slightly differently. I don't know. I think it's part of the game. It seems to be part of the game. And in the end, I mean, because of course I was following my countryman Rinus VeeKay a little bit, in that final stint, at some point, he had Ryan Hunter-Reay behind him who kept off Marcus Ericsson for a while. But eventually, Marcus Ericsson just got past because Marcus Ericsson has a better and faster car. So I do think sort of this also sorts itself out most of the time, more often than not. So I don't have a massive issue with it, but I also understand Pato's frustration, of course.
Definitely. As for Rinus, what's going on?
Finally.
What's going on with Rinus this season, man? It's like, he has a good race in Portland, but like it's been, again, for him up and down as well. Like,
yeah, well, I think it's that Carpenter Racing has had a very rough season. I do think sort of that where some of the competition has been investing, has been sort of expanding, has been growing, has been developing. I think ECR has been standing still mostly, and if you stand still and the rest around you develops, you go backward. And so the Rinus VeeKay that we saw in 2020, 2021, when he could sometimes challenge for even podiums, he won a race, got a pole a few times. It's just becoming more and more difficult, and also because, of course, the series as a whole becomes more and more competitive every single season that passes. I do believe that at Carpenter Racing needs more investment. They need to invest more on the engineering side. They need to just step up because they're at risk of falling behind. I mean, if you see that even a team like AJ Foyt Racing now sort of teams up with Penske, right? Yeah. I mean, AJ Foyt Racing is at this moment a competitor to ECR. Well, if they get sort of access to the Penske database, just like MSR gets to at Andretti, and ECR is left working with no one, that is a problem. Now, obviously, I mean, they've taken some action halfway through the year, right? I mean, they relieved Conor Daly of his contract, brought in Ryan Hunter-Reay. But to be completely honest, Ryan Hunter-Reay, in terms of actual results, I mean, him and Rinus have been teammates for 9 races now. Rinus has beaten him 9 times in qualifying and 9 times in the race. So does that say something about Ryan Hunter-Reay? Does it say something about Rinus VeeKay? I like to think that it shows that Rinus VeeKay is really good and deserves a better car.
What do you think? What do you think about that Conor Daly situation, though, letting him go? Like him and Ed have a good relationship and all that, but I mean, this was a literal business move. Like it was.
But I mean, if you were going to replace a driver, if that is the decision you're taking, are you going to replace Conor Daly in the 20 or Rinus VeeKay in the 21? Who's the guy that has been giving you results the last few years? It's not Conor Daly. Right. It isn't. And I'm not even saying that sort of, with my orange hat on. But I mean, just look at the results. Rinus VeeKay is the driver who at ECR has been scoring pole positions. He got the car on the podium. He got the car to win at IMS. Conor Daly hasn't. So, I mean, it's a simple choice. If that is a decision you're going to make, like I'm going to replace a driver, well, yeah, then it's going to be Conor Daly. And I mean, of course, that's a shame for Daly because clearly he has skills, as he has shown in his the other races that he's done at RLL and at MSR. But I mean, in the moment, I understood the decision, but I'm not sure that it has really helped the team that much.
Yeah, I hope Conor gets on somewhere else because I think he's good for the series and he's a good driver as well.
He's a great personality, right? I mean, I like Conor. Absolutely. I like him a lot. So yeah, I hope so too.
Yeah. Some off-track things. So Romain Grosjean confirmed that he will not be back at Andretti Autosport next season. Grosjean said that he was out at the team, but that, quote, "I'm a phoenix. I will always find a place to land." In 45 starts in IndyCar, he's still winless. He does have his contract with Lamborghini and their LMDH program for WEC and IMSA, but I think Grosjean believes he could be back in IndyCar next season. I don't know where. Like, Dale Coyne, it sounds like Coyne's almost got his driver lineups, suited.
That's the word on the street, right? That Dale Coyne would be interested in him. I mean, the thing is, of course, the NBC report that we saw sort of coming out of the weekend, Grosjean leaving, Andretti possibly going back to 3 cars. I mean, it was basically on the record confirmation of stories that have been singing around a little bit already in the grapevine. I heard both of those stories before. I mean, what I'm wondering is sort of Grosjean. I mean, clearly he's well paid at Andretti. Yeah. Can Dale Coyne Racing match that, or is Grosjean willing to sort of go down considerably in salary? Because that would almost have to be a necessity, unless sort of there's suddenly a big sponsor coming along that we're not aware about. And then there's also the other stories that sort of we've heard about Devlin DiFrancesco being in talks with Dale Coyne Racing. There's also been a very long-standing story that Daniel Frost from Indy Next is lined up for a seat at DCR. Does that mean that Dale Coyne goes to 3 cars? Or are we having 3 names for 2 seats and one of them will lose out? I mean, I don't know yet, but this is why they call it silly season. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it would be great actually if Dale Coyne goes back to 3 cars if they can do it.
It wasn't a good weekend for Grosjean either way. I mean, having that blow up with his crew at the end of qualifying there, we got bounced out and blaming it on traffic and so I saw some of that. I saw his onboard camera. Like it didn't. I don't know. I didn't really see traffic really interfering with his lap, but
it's an illustration of what is rumored to have been, one of the factors in the end of his Andretti relationship, right? Just the way he has a bit of a short fuse, and that's probably because he's really driven and he really wants to succeed. But I mean, I don't know. I mean, sometimes he does seem to have a bit of a short temper sometimes, more so than other drivers. I mean, of course, we've seen Will Power at Road America sort of had a few choice words for Romain Grosjean. I mean, we've seen Pato, we've seen Helio in the past sort of sometimes, just really losing it. But with Grosjean, it seems to be sort of like a pattern. I mean, it was no different when he was in Formula One. I mean, he's always been a very emotional driver, an emotional personality.
He got an earful from a few people on his crew following that qualifying. Like TV cameras pick that up perfectly. It just really looks like they're just frustrated with him. And, Michael has said this in the past, that being a team player and, paraphrasing here, but how you treat the crew is a very important thing. And it sounds like that may not have been going down from Grosjean to the rest of the crew.
And you could see when he made the move from Coin to Andretti that you could see, that might be a match that works.
Yeah.
But then you start working together with each other on a day-to-day basis. And maybe after a while, you just conclude that, hey, our personalities, our approaches to this thing are too different. And this is just not going to work in the long term. And then it's probably best for all parties to just go their separate ways. But I mean, Grosjean, of course, on his best day, I mean, he's a great driver and he can beat anyone.
Yeah. For Andretti, you had mentioned 3 cars possibly for next season. Yes, that is the rumor that, you and I know of that's going around. I mean, Herta, Ericsson, Kirkwood would be that lineup. Yeah. Fairly strong, but I think for Michael, he really wanted Ericsson and his experience on the team. I think he feels that Ericsson will be good for the younger drivers in Herta and Kirkwood. This is a team, that's made quite a few mistakes lately, especially this season, and last season as well. I guess you could wrap that in. I don't know what Ericsson is going to be able to bring. Yes, he's talented, obviously, but he does have experience. But does he have more IndyCar experience than Colton Herta?
No, I don't think he does.
Yeah,
but I mean, he is a very. We're talking before about sort of mental stability. I think Marcus is is also pretty unfazed, sort of, whatever you throw at him, sort of, he just deals with it. And I think you should also not forget, I mean, he is an Indy 500 winner. Andretti Autosport would really love to have another Indy 500 winner in their ranks. They have that now. So he's very marketable in that sense as well. So I think there's also a commercial element to this. I mean, I've heard some rumors about sort of what they're going to pay him every year.
That was a big thing for him.
He's going to make a lot of money at Andretti Autosport, and I'm very happy for him. But that also means that probably they'll need to bring in some sponsorship, in order to sort of really fund that team more. But I mean, it's clear, what they've done in recent years, where basically the Ford car has been sort of sold to the highest bidder. They want to change that, because I think Michael Andretti has been quite outspoken about that as well. In an ideal world, he wants to have 4 paid drives, that are sort of 4 drives whereby sort of a driver comes in and gets paid a salary rather than having to bring funding, and just 4 strong, equal-ish drivers. I think that's sort of what he needs to do, because, that's how Penske does it as well. That's how McLaren does it as well. And, to a large extent, that's how Ganassi does it as well.
For the leaders circle payout, though, if you go up to that 4th car, though, how does that affects your, that battle for that?
Yeah, well, the thing is, of course, with that technically only the first 3 cars for each team qualify for the leader circle, but then Andretti has the 4th car, which has been, as you say in America, grandfathered in, because they have sort of some original right to it. That is sort of the question mark that I have around the rumor of them going back to 3. If they give up that 4th entry, do they lose that 4th leadership car? Or leader circle car, because that might be a consideration against that decision.
Linus Lundqvist joining Chip Ganassi Racing, so sounds like it's a multi-year deal with CGR. He'd have to, I think he'd have to bring a bit of a budget to that, Jeroen. I don't know how. I mean, Linus had a good showing in Nashville with Myles Shank Racing, but he's got to be bringing a little bit of cash with him to CGR.
I don't think so.
Really? You think
I also don't think that he's going to be paid, Ericsson, Herta-like salaries. But we know when sort of Ganassi brought in Palou, I mean, Palou was sort of, that's one of the reasons for their initial fallout, right? That sort of Palou wanted improved terms on his contract, and they said, well, why? Because you signed this willingly. I mean, with Lundqvist, I mean, I don't claim to know it, but from what I've heard is sort of that basically they just want him, and I can totally understand it, because I mean the guy is a great talent, a great driver.
Yeah.
And I mean, this to me is one of those examples of, good things happening to good people. I spoke to him earlier last week, sort of when we had a media call. And especially after what happened last year when he won the Indy Lights Championship, sort of thought that he was going to get a certain scholarship amount, got only half of that, to his big surprise.
Yeah.
And I asked him, I said, does this feel like vindication to get this deal in place? And he said, yeah, absolutely, 100%. Because, I mean, 12 months ago, he lost out on the Dale Coyne Racing deal because he couldn't get the money together. And now he has a multi-year contract with Chip Ganassi Racing. I mean, I think it's great. I really think it's great.
Yeah.
And I expect great things from him.
For sure. Yeah, he's definitely talented. I mean, that race in Nashville was very impressive considering he hadn't been in a race car in like forever.
Never did live pit stops.
Yeah, that too, right? I mean, holy hell. And on a street circuit as tough as Nashville is to boot. So their lineup for 2024 would look like Scott Dixon, Alex Palou, which is, I guess, Chip is basically confirmed that. Marcus Armstrong and Linus Lundqvist. That's a pretty good lineup for CGR for 2024. I mean, a lot of talent there, Jeroen.
Yeah, of course, Armstrong also still has to be confirmed, but there again, sort of, we're all hearing, right, that that's going to happen, which is great because, I mean, I think Armstrong has done a good job as well as a rookie. Can only get better as time progresses. And then indeed, you have a nice split. You have two of these youngsters and then two more experienced champions, proven champions. I mean, that's a great squad to have. So
some silly season stuff. Rosenqvist to Myers-Shank Racing.
Yes.
I mean, leaving Arrow McLaren to go there. I mean, I think at the end of the day, if that were to happen, he must be leaving Arrow McLaren for Myers-Shank Racing simply because of contract length, I would think. I don't know why you would want to leave Arrow McLaren, though.
Well, the thing is, of course, I mean, last year, Alex Palou was supposed to go there, and Rosenqvist was supposed to leave.
Formula E.
And then in the end, yeah, exactly, and I heard that he was also in talks with Juncos. Well, anyway, but there's all sorts of discussion. But basically, they had told him, you're no longer wanted here.
Yes.
And then the Palou thing didn't happen. And then, maybe you can stay on for one more year. And now again, they were planning to bring in Palou, but then it was like, well, actually Palou's not happening. Maybe, if they keep, how many times do you want to be told that you're second, third, fourth choice for a seat? I can imagine that at some point when a team like MSR says, you know what, we want to, we've had a few rough years, but we want to sort of completely renew our package. We have a rookie, very talented rookie in Tom Blomqvist, but we need some experience next to that. We need a team leader. Here's a multi-year deal. You're our guy. I think somehow, yes, maybe you can argue that it's a step back, but I mean, Myers-Shank Racing, they're also winners, right?
Yeah.
They're not going to be stuck at the level that they are now. Yeah. So I can see it. I can see why Felix would like a fresh start, so to say.
Yep. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, and they had some pretty competitive seasons there as well. It's just gone a bit downhill the last year or so. So David Malukas would then, I guess, move over to Arrow McLaren. I was on a press conference with him a few weeks ago, and he did make mention that essentially his plans are confirmed for next season. He couldn't announce it until after the last race of the season, but the rumor mill is turning, and it is saying that he's headed to Arrow McLaren. Do you like that move? Pato.
Well, I can totally understand from David's perspective. I can totally understand it. It's a great thing to do. To be honest, earlier in the silly season, I heard that he was very close to signing with Carpenter Racing. I personally would have loved to see Renus and Malukas in one team. But then, when the Palou deal fell through and McLaren was seeing like who else is out there. If you get the call from Arrow McLaren, like, would you like to drive in one of our cars instead of it at Carpenter Racing? It's not a difficult choice to make. If you're David Malukas, I get it. And he's deserved it. He's done some great stuff in what is a difficult car, because the Dale Coyne Racing car hasn't been super competitive at times either. He's a great talent. He's a great guy. I'm very happy for him.
Yeah. McLaren and Juncos is also a rumor that's been out there. This is a story you're currently working on.
No, I've been monitoring it a little bit. I've heard some rumors indeed, and it was already around Nashville that indeed there had been some talks between representatives of Juncos Hollinger and Arrow McLaren about possibly a collaboration along the lines of maybe Andretti MSR of Penske Floyd. To be honest, I don't know where those talks are right now, whether anything is actually happening. But we've known sort of that McLaren has an interest in fielding a fourth car due to capacity that might not be possible yet. So, yeah, I've heard the talks are ongoing, but where they lead, that we'll have to wait and see. That's
an interesting one for me, because you would have to assume that it's got to be, if they're going to allow one more car, it would have to be ILOT. Like, I don't know. It would have to be. It's a great way to get an indirect read on how good Callum Ilott is, right? Yeah. Because I mean, we've heard his name around the McLaren seat as well. Yeah. So would that? Yeah, I mean, I could see it. If it all comes to pass. But yeah, like I say, I don't know. I don't know where these talks are right now. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But it would be an intriguing combination. We only have a few minutes left, but I wanted to make sure we touched on the junior formulas as well. So Myles Rowe winning the USF Pro Championship. I mean, that guy is he was on fire all season, man. Like, I remember, man. I mean, after the first two rounds of as you know, I mean, I cover the junior open wheel for Feeder Series, the feederseries.net platform. And after the first two rounds at St. Pete and Sebring, when he had won 3 of the first 4 races, I wrote a piece saying who's going to stop Myles Rowe. Well, turns out no one was, because I mean, already last year he missed the USF 2000 championship by a whisker. That was also in Portland, that season finale. But this year, I mean, him and Pabst Racing, they really found something, and they really just went from strength to strength. And now he's a winner. Now he's got a championship. He's got a scholarship. Moving to Indy next year. For that, I just wanted to ask you about the scholarship stuff. So what can you just elaborate for the listeners a bit more about what the scholarship actually is? Because remember, like, they had technically kind of cut some of it off, like some of it was prize money or like what was it? Well, in Indy Next they have changed it, but it's also because of the ownership, because Indy Next is now run and operated by IndyCar, by the IndyCar organization, whereas the USF Pro Championships are all run by Anderson Promotions. Right. But basically the way it works is that all the way from USF juniors down, and then we're talking F4 level cars, if you win the championship you get a scholarship to progress to the next level. It won't take you there all the way, but it's basically, you got 70-80% of your budget complete, and then you can sort of just go. I mean, I think that's one of the great benefits compared to the European ladder. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you win the FIA Formula 3 championship, you get nothing. Mm-hmm. So if you don't have budget, you still can progress to the next level. And that sort of has it has posed a problem for some drivers. Yeah. And I mean, Myles Rowe last year was in the exact was in that position as well. I mean, was low on funds, wasn't sure whether he could continue in USF 2000. Eventually, got renewed backing from Roger Penske and the Penske organization, and this year managed to sort of get that USF Pro 2000 deal in place. Yeah. Like I say, I've been hearing his name a lot around Andretti Autosport in recent weeks. So that's where I expect him to land next year. Awesome. And Andretti Autosport is a championship winning team in Indy Next, so that would be a great next step for him. And then in USF 2000, you had Simon Sikes winning the championship there. Can you just again the listeners and viewers let them know just a tiny bit on Simon's as well? I know we're tight on time, but the great thing about Simon is sort of he's always been struggling with funds, has run a few partial seasons in the USF 2000. This year, finally, he's basically in the first few rounds, he's been running from, basically on a weekend by weekend basis, trying to collect funding, and he just needed to keep winning. And that's what he did. And now he's got the championship, got the scholarship, can continue his career. I mean, again, good things happen to good people. Yeah, fantastic stuff. Jeroen, thanks very much for taking the time to do all this. Let everybody know where they can find you and what you're working on. Well, as I said, I'm just following the American Open Wheel feeder series. So follow us on FS Americas on Twitter, now known as X, I think. And then you'll find me eventually as well there. Thanks again for your time. Really appreciate it. I'm Tim Hauraney. Please head over to Spotify. Give Nailing the Apex 5-star rating and a follow. Same goes with Apple Podcasts. If you can write a review, that'd really help us a lot. You can also watch us on YouTube as well. Thanks again, everyone, for watching and listening, and we'll talk to you all later.